Good.
Okay, so it's Monday, October 12th, and we're going to go ahead and call the executive cabinet meeting for the Board of County Commissioners to order. And let the record reflect that we have all three commissioners present. And first on our agenda is the infamous Mike Burgess coming to us straight from Olympia with all kinds of good news.
Well, Commissioner, I wish I were in Olympia, but not really. I'm telling you. Still. Is that an Amacio sighting?
It is.
Yes.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm fine, Mike. Thank you very much.
So, Commissioners, we met about a month ago and kind of kicked around some legislative items and thought it was appropriate to follow up with you. And then just from a plan of action to take whatever we finalize today, and then, well, it wouldn't be final after today, I guess, but clean it up and get to a point where we can put it in more of a letter, kind of a narrative form. I'll work with Jared to do that, and then be ready to share that with folks. And then I'd like us to do something with the delegation by Zoom, before the end of the year. And you may recall when we talked about this and all the different discussions about the possibility of special sessions and things like that. Well, certainly now it doesn't look like there's going to be a special session. You probably saw the news a few weeks ago that the budget shortfall is in half with the revenue projections. My guess is, though, there will be one more revenue projection before session starts. My guess is at that point you'll see that revenue shortfall shrink again. The projections shrink again. Not a huge amount, but the urgency to solve budget problems has gone away for the majority party, right, wrong, or indifferent. As a result, then I don't feel like we need to, because when we had originally talked about this, I was worried. I wanted us to get in front of the legislators before they went back to Olympia for a special session. But since it's not going to happen, we're good to do it before January, I think it's the 10th. As far as what session's looking like, it sounds like everything I've heard in the last week or two is that it will be significantly remote. And that is going to have a pretty big impact on what I would call rationing legislation. And I just don't know how the legislature can really do a lot of bills, all their hearings remotely. It just isn't made that way. And you all have, a few of you have testified remotely before, keeping in mind that was only in the Senate. The House does not allow remote testimony, or hasn't to this date. So they would have to make some changes to allow for that. Just committee time is going to be at a premium. It's going to be very difficult to do. I've heard out of the House Democrat leadership that they're looking at what you call 3 or 4 buckets of things to look at. With one, of course, being the budget. Another dealing with anything on equity issues. Another dealing with police reform issues or criminal justice law enforcement reform issues. And then the fourth, I guess, would be some of the environmental policies and some things like that. And when I do talk budget, I do anticipate revenue discussions. When we spoke last, I had thought that a capital gains tax would be the likely target. It looks like there's a transition to going with some sort of a statewide head tax, the kind of thing that Seattle's done. High wage employers or large employers, I don't even know what the rate is in Seattle, but something along those lines at the state level. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and what I'm hearing. Because of the rationing of legislation, I don't think it's very realistic to ask for a bunch of policy changes and policy bills. because anything that comes up that doesn't fit into those 4 buckets, and oftentimes you hear very common refrain from legislators that, well, that can just wait till next year. I think you're going to hear that a lot this year. There's going to be a lot of punting to 2022 with anything that doesn't have to happen right now. Having said that, we have not, and you as a board have not asked for a bunch of policy bills and policy changes. We've, over the years, we've had a handful of bills that we've wanted to see passed and been relatively successful with those. But it seems like our topics have been much more broad this year, but for some specifics, of course, within capital budgets and transportation budgets. So anyway, that's me talking a lot about just kind of previewing where I hear things or where I see things going right now, and just as a starting point. Do you have any questions about some of those details, or if I glossed over anything too quickly?
Mary or Josh, do you have any comments?
Yeah, Mike, could you just go through your 4 points again? I missed one of them.
So I said, what I said? I said budget, of course, operating budget, of course, equity. And so an equity, I think, kind of combines with police reform and criminal justice reform. I think that, depending on how you look at it, that those issues go together. And then there will be some looks at some of the environmental issues, climate, some of those things will get looked at again. So they're loose buckets, but I just think that the focus will be on those moving pieces, and we'll have to see how that turns out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I guess I would say then too, and then you were saying, kind of the last thing would be kind of what they're going to do for revenue, whether it's a head tax or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so like I said, head tax is the one I'm hearing now. Certainly a lot depends on what election results look like. I don't anticipate the House or Senate, keeping in mind the House is right now 57-41 and the Senate is 28-21. I don't think those numbers move. If anything, if I had to guess, I would think the majorities pick up maybe 1 seat or 2 seats. But I don't think it's going to be a drastic enough change to be able to have the minority parties block some of these tax votes that even look what's happened over the last couple sessions. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
So Mike,
yes, sir.
With the head tax, I'm curious. So they've already managed to get rid of Boeing. What's the next company they're trying to get rid of?
I'm not sure that that's a question I can answer, Commissioner.
Maybe it was rhetorical, maybe not.
That's my guess, maybe. But
okay.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Have you heard with any of the talks around a head tax? Would that also apply to local governments as well?
So, from what I'm hearing, Commissioner, it would just be a broad statewide one. And keep in mind, there's all kinds of dials you could do on it. So remember the B&O tax increase that passed a couple years ago? It was a flat bump from, I believe, 1.2 to 1.5 on most services. And then the companies that were involved in high tech, they went, I think, all the way up to like 1.8. And then the super wealthy ones, I think they had to gross over 200 million a year or something along those lines. There was some kicker in there that theirs went even higher. So that, of course, I think it only hit Microsoft and Amazon. So there's not a lot of details on it. But I do think it would be a graduated scale, because when you hear the terms dials, they remember what they did with when the REIT bill passed a couple years ago, that it lowered taxes for folks that paid on a home that I think was 250,000 or less. You didn't pay REIT anymore. And then from 250 to, I think it was either 750 or $1 million, you stayed about the same. And then $1 million you went over. So I think it'll be something along those lines, Commissioner, but I don't have any of the details as yet. And so obviously you're thinking from a Spokane-centric standpoint, which of your largest employers over there would be impacted by it. And I don't know an answer. So.
Hey, Mike, have
Obviously, as I hear and see things, I will let you know.
you been hearing any rumblings over there about the raise in the unemployment tax?
Workers' comp.
So there is the pot, Jerry, that they have to fill because of the, I don't know what else to call it, other than the fraud. I do know there's discussions about it. There was an announcement last week about essentially what it was a punt to delay any impact by a year. But none of that has been worked out legislatively yet. I mean, there will have to be something that's done to backfill that money because, to my understanding, last I read, the number was around 400 or 500 million that's gone, and so the ratepayers will have to make that up somewhere along the way. But I don't know that I've seen a specific plan yet on how that would work, what that would look like.
Part of the there was a discussion this morning on the news about a small business person could face up to a 700% increase to make up the delta.
Well, I guess I'd have to see the map. That seems big to me.
Yeah, it does, but they repeated it like 3 times. In fact, the gentleman said, Chris Cargill said, I'm not misspeaking, it's 700%. If it's not a done deal, but that's what they're kicking around. And of course, the issue is our small businesses over here just taking a beating, just like they have over there. And that's about the last thing you need right now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and I'd have to look into the details. So I'll make a note if I see anything.
Thanks.
I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other items are, what can the legislature do with regard to COVID relief? And I've talked to the Realtor Association about the possibility of them supporting like a 2-year harmonizing bill for REIT 1 and 2 that allows us to use those funds to maybe support transportation or other infrastructure costs. So it'd be just a 2-year harmonizing bill, but it could do a lot to help us free up some money to put in some infrastructure.
Commissioner, what your local realtor said that was okay?
Said that he thought that's something they could support on a short-term basis.
Do you know if they're talking to their statewide association about that?
He was going to circle around with the statewide and find out what kind of pushback they've got on that. I know that making a permanent change, they're not going to support, but doing something on a short term, that might be something they could wrap their arms around.
Okay. Let me check with Wasac folks about that. I'll reach out
And then
to a few others and just kind of see what the thought would be on that.
And then are there any other bills that could be delayed that have a financial impact on counties that, give us some relief for 2 years and let us recover kind of a deal?
So I know that you might remember that I think deputy treasurer is the right term for Bowles. That over the years, he's had a few bills that would help counties in different areas. There are indications from the local government chair on the House side specifically that he'd look at some of those things and put something together, but it's not in any sort of final form. Staff from both the Association of Counties and Cities have been working together with Representative, it's Jerry Paulette out of the Seattle area on that. And so they would be rehashes of other things we've talked about in the past with, the REIT was in there, non-supplant language, some of those types of things were in that legislation, but it has not been brought up yet. But I think without a doubt, as those things come forward, that's something that I'll bring back to you all for your blessing at that point. But this REIT one's an interesting one because this is, that REIT's been kicked around for years,
Right.
Trying to give you all more flexibility with it. But that's why I asked if your local chapter, the realtors, would have an issue with it.
Yeah, he's going to chase it up the flagpole and find out and stuff. And the other thing is, assuming that our representatives from the 6th get through, I know that one of them that sponsored a bill last time to get rid of the interest rate, reduce the interest rate on property taxes, and oh, that's right, hurt the county to the tune of a little over $2 million. Is going to float the bill again this year. So if that in fact happens, you can watch for that. We need to make sure that we can defeat that again. Otherwise,
Yeah, yes, Commissioner.
Treasurer's office.
I'm aware, Commissioner, that that issue will be in play again. That also, though, that concept is being discussed in some of the other, melded into some of the other affordable housing proposals that the majority is looking at. So I'm aware of that. I'll keep you updated as that develops.
Okay.
On the agenda I've given you, so I made a note to add the read in. Nothing here is new. I do think as a group, the three of you should come to a narrowing on capital budget and which projects as a commission you want to prioritize. And these are ones that we've talked about loosely. None of them are unfamiliar to you. But I think, we'll have our best success, asking for one or two from a strategy standpoint. I think that's the best way to do that. And that's not something you need to decide right this moment, but be thinking about it. And, between the three of you deciding from a priority standpoint, which ones you'd want to have listed in the, as a tier 1, 2, 3, or something along those lines.
Great.
Sorry, Commissioner.
No, go ahead.
And then on the transportation list, you might have heard that there was some stuff going on last week with GSI having a meeting with Representative Phi, who's the chair on the House side Transportation Committee. And it turned out, I was inquiring with Jim Hedrick about it, and turns out that it was set up to be the business community, that WASAC has done some other reaching out. So they were kind of doing it, with the different interest groups in mind. I sent you that agenda, and then the other document you have is it's a project list that comes from SRTC, and that list was given to Representative Phi as kind of to my knowledge, as kind of these are the projects we're looking at in the region. I think as a region, it would make sense for the larger players there to have a discussion and talk about ranking this list, or maybe that's already in the process of happening. The reason I say that is Representative Phi is intent on doing some sort of a revenue package, or at least starting the discussion. And I just want to make sure that the region has its priorities in order together and is more successful that way. One of the issues I think that you all have is, to my knowledge, you do not have a sort of mega project or a really big one in the region left, other than to protect the funding for the North-South corridor, the existing funding. And given that there are shortfalls in the transportation budget, that's a worthy goal, and I think we should always keep that on. But when it comes to new projects, getting some sort of a regional ranking or regional agreement on priority list would be, I think, very sensible to do. I don't believe, if I were a betting person, I would not think that a transportation revenue package would pass this session. Just given the complexities of doing things remotely, and then the other focus on dealing with operating budget and other revenue sources like the head tax, like we're talking about. And most of the time, transportation packages end up taking, at least 2, if not 3 sessions to pass. But again, I don't want to miss the opportunity if in fact they do move forward with one.
So
and
Mike,
yes, sir.
Yeah, can I give you a little bit more background on this spreadsheet here?
100%, please do.
So So Ben Wick contacted me about a month ago and said Phi was looking at trying to put together a list of shovel-ready projects. You know, transportation shovel-ready means 2 or 3 years. And so I told him that, Connect Washington, fund Connect Washington first, because we've already vetted those projects. They've already gone through all of they just need to provide the funding and replace the funding lost to the ballot. Then maintenance and preservation is number 2. Then this list here is nothing more than an emotional wish list. It has not been vetted. It's not been prioritized. It's not been anything other than a wish list from some folks in the business community and a wish list from local electeds, but it's not in any way to be interpreted as a priority list, because it's not, and stuff. So if they can get to where they can fund the first 2, Connect Washington and maintenance preservation, I don't see that they're ever going to get any money greater than that in the foreseeable future. So this was an entertaining exercise, but it was driven more by emotion than it was data or demand.
Right.
So just give you a little bit of background. And we talked about this specifically in those terms at the last SRTC meeting last Thursday. And I know that Josh was there and he can affirm the conversation if he wants to.
Well, Commissioner, I'm certainly aware that this list is nothing more than what you described it as. We want to push the region to come up with some sort of priority list. And because again, I think it's the most successful way to get things. And again, given that there is not this big mega project that the region's coalescing behind, I think it would behoove us to do that.
So when you talk about a mega project, what dollar amount are you looking for a mega project?
Oh, I mean, I was even thinking something at least about 50 million or 70 million, something like that. Is there a big interchange project or something like that? But to my knowledge, that's not there now.
Well, actually it is. The 195 I-90 connection is a $400 million project. That's WashDOT's numbers, 400 million.
Well, but doesn't that need the planning money first?
Well, they're doing the planning now. It's already got the planning money. So they're doing that corridor study right now.
Well, and again, if that's something that the region wants to do, I wanted to push to see if there can be a regional conversation about that.
Okay.
And I mean, at the last SRTC, was it left at SRTC that there would be some sort of a talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, what they did is presented this as a draft, and so I'm anticipating at the next November or December meeting, we're probably going to have more conversation about this wish list, but we already have a priority list of projects that's been developed and vetted through the SRTC and MPTO process. That list already exists. I don't know. This was an exercise to appease Phi and some of the local businesses, but beyond that, I don't think it's got any hope of getting funded any more than what we already have done through the MPTO.
Yeah, and again, I just don't want to miss an opportunity. So,
yeah.
Okay. So other than, I mean, I don't know that we need to go back over all of the things that are on this list, but at this point, I'm happy to get ready, starting to draft up a more formal agenda for your approval over the next 3 weeks. And then I'll work with Gina and about trying to nail down a date to invite a delegation call to present that at that time. But the hard part for you all will be, trying to figure out a ranking or a tiering system on your capital budget request. And then, if the region does get together on this transportation list, but I think more importantly for you all, it's the capital budget request.
Okay.
So other than that, I don't have anything additional. I can go forward and put in filler when you've been able to do that. But otherwise, I think I've given you everything I needed today. And I'll just wait to hear back from you, I guess, on capital. And again, I'll work with Jared on getting this more formally written up.
So for Mary and Josh, you want to look at that list of capital projects, and maybe next week we come back and try and prioritize what we want to give to Mike in terms of going after? Unless you already have your list prioritized now.
Yeah, no, it's the 5 items that are on there, right? Fairgrounds, medical examiner, Doris Morris. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, not really put those there, commissioners, because those are the ones I've heard about. So if you all have another one, put it on, certainly. But that's a summary of what I've heard.
Okay. All right. Anything else for Mike? All right.
Stay
Thanks,
healthy,
Eric.
Mike.
All right. It's nice to see you all. I'll be in touch, Jared. Thanks.
Okay. So next item is
Mr. Holman.
Mr. John Holman. Are you there?
Looks like him.
All right. You're going to talk to us about fairgrounds, sir.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Excellent. Right. So I can try to share my screen, or if you can get the PowerPoint open.
You can share your screen.
Okay. Let me see if I can find it here.
Is Aaron Gertel joining us?
We let her know in the meeting, Josh. I don't know
Okay.
whether she's tying in. That might have been her right there. Nope.
It's a 4:35.
I can start the PowerPoint if you'd like.
Okay. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
No?
You see me?
It might be better if you did this. I'm seem to be struggling here with it. So
That's not it.
Well, John.
Or is it? Yeah, no,
Aaron
that's
just
it.
joined.
Okay, Aaron is on now too, so
Good morning.
Hi,
good
Aaron.
morning.
Hello.
All right. You just had it. Here
yep, there it is right there. Perfect.
Okay.
Yes, and thank you for following along with that, taking care of that for me. Okay, let's get started. I know your time is valuable. I'm John Homan, Deputy City Manager with City of Spokane Valley, and this is a project that we've been working on for some time. Wanted to give you a brief background on what is it and what has the city done. This might be a bit more detailed than you were looking for, but I think a solid background, at least to understand how we got to where we did, is appropriate this morning. So the city started our economic development program in 2012. As part of that, we knew that we were very dependent on retail sales, so we hired Community Attributes out of Seattle to do a retail improvement strategy for us back in 2015. They analyzed a bunch of stuff, retail trade area, demographics, and out of that came a strong connection between retail and tourism, and we decided to follow up on tourism as an additional study item. And the next slide, please, will show why we decided to do that. So in trade capture areas, if you look at the percentages on this bar graph, anything over 100% means that you're capturing the spending purchase power of all your citizens within your jurisdiction. Anything below that means that you're not. Your citizens are going outside of the area to spend their money. And the Valley does really well. Again, on motor vehicles and parts, you can see, we're almost 200% of our purchasing power within our jurisdiction, but we really lag below on many different areas: food services, drinking, accommodation, and any type of entertainment facilities. Next slide, please. And again, when you start looking at these a little more closely, we lag behind you guys and also Spokane quite dramatically on some of these retail sales per capita. So we knew that this is an area where we definitely are behind the times. So we decided that we needed to look more closely at tourism. So next slide, please. So we initiated a 3-phase study. The first phase was pulling a bunch of stakeholders together and looking at different options, different projects within the region. I think we came up with 10. Some of those were Whitewater Park at Sullivan Park area where the river is, the west lawn improvements at Center Place, which we're just finishing up on right now. And various other things. We even, the sports were part of that as part of the effort that Doug Chase worked on several years ago. So that's included in there as well. And we included both the retail strategy and the phase 1 and phase 2. I gave those over to Gina last week. If you're interested, you have that information over there somewhere to look at. It's pretty easy to read through. You know, most of the reports these days are more interactive than anything else than just a bunch of paper. Phase 3 improvements is kind of where we're at now. We, again, just finishing up on the west lawn improvements at Center Place. That's to create an outdoor exhibit space for Crave and other events, improve that space out there. But the fairgrounds is one of those that we've been studying for the last couple of years. So next slide, please. So you ask, well, what is it? And why would you do this? Well, and in our study, we came up with, or the consultant came up with various different areas of the city that should be a focus. And one of the areas that they looked at was the fairgrounds and the stadium district, they called it. And a lot of potential there, not a lot of investment in the last 15 or so years. And so there's a lot of opportunity out here. And here's some of the reasons for that. And this is some of the work that we did both with Aaron and with Rich prior over the last 3-4 years before he retired. And so these are some of the justifications for why we would do it, but mainly is to capture existing demand in the winter. At the time, Rich and Aaron felt that if you had some additional space out there, it would be helpful to bring that on, and they could book more events and maybe do it in a way that you don't have to completely lock away the whole facility while some shows are moving in or out. You can actually have more, accommodate different shows at the same time. So that's kind of got us started on the study. Next slide, please. This is just the location of the fairgrounds. Everybody knows where it is. Next slide, thanks. Okay, so we hired Architects West to look at this in a lot more detail. And these are some of the slides that they gave us in conjunction. I believe Aaron was there and Jerry as well. This is the external site analysis as they looked at different things like traffic counts going by Broadway and Havana, the different approaches that the entrances to the fairgrounds and where the viewpoints are and what would stand out? What are different things that they could bring forward to improve this area? Next slide, please. So then they looked internally and kind of designated a couple of different areas for better or for worse. They called the easterly piece the equestrian area. Then you have the fairgrounds in the center and the stadium or baseball area where the stadium is and parking, and looked at the different approaches. Next slide, please. Based on that, we ended up, or they ended up coming up with different ideas for how to improve the fairgrounds and what type of facility would they recommend. And the barn area is what we had talked to Rich about years ago, and that was his idea to take a look at that and do some improvements, maybe tear that down and put a new building in. The architects, however, went a little bit further than that, looked at different areas here. And can you put something out by Broadway or the corner of Broadway and Havana that would catch people's eye as they drive by? Is there some other different approach or an area that you could put this in? Next slide, please. And what they came up with, their recommendation was to look at this area, which they called the node option. And the different arrows there point to different connectivity within the site and the street. So they felt this was a good location. The square that they're showing is further refined on the next couple of slides in the renderings, but really what it would do is not be situated too much out in the parking lot, but be more closely associated with the stadium and the existing buildings. And it would really replace the entry gate and some of the open area that, or unused area, kind of just west of the existing buildings, just north of the stadium. Next slide, please. So this kind of gets to the meat of our proposal. So architect analyzed many different alternatives in consultation with Rich and Aaron. The consultant suggested a 30,000 square foot addition or new structure. That would act as a new main entry. It would also have exhibit space. The fairgrounds individuals, Aaron would have some new offices there instead of that kind of outbuilding at the fairgrounds. And then kind of the key piece would be a restaurant and a bar with both indoor and outdoor dining. So one of the things that the consultant talked about was that there's a lot of times where you have activities going on at the fairgrounds, both internally to the exhibit space, but also at the stadium. And what happens when somebody's done with either the ball game or looking at the exhibits or the different shows? They end up leaving. Well, wouldn't it be nice if you were able to capture them and keep them there for a bit longer and provide them with a facility to do that in? And so that's really the idea here, is really to try to bring more of an anchor facility into the fairgrounds. Back in the studies, I think they estimated a $8 million cost. We've escalated that to $10 million. And the reason that we're coming forward and talking to you now is that we are working on our state 2021 legislative agenda. And we were talking it over with our lobbyist, and they recommended, after we went through a bunch of different options, they really felt that this project was really conducive to what the legislatures be looking for. So they're looking for projects that will stimulate the economy and help in a post-COVID world. And so that's one of the things that we believe that this project will do. And so in consultation with our lobbyists, they feel a $3 million state ask is appropriate. And so that's what we'll be going forward with. The city initiated a number of years ago an additional 1.3% lodging tax that's been collected for several years. So we have 2.9 million set aside in that account. And then really our idea is to bond the balance of the construction costs. We have that detail coming up a little bit more on some of the subsequent slides, and use the lodging tax revenue to pay that. Again, I guess, our pitch, if the commissioners, if you felt this was such a great project and you wanted to commit some of your funds to it, that'd be great. However, that's not what we're really asking for. I think what we would be asking for is for you to contribute the land and then be in a position, since it is your fairgrounds, to own, operate, and maintain the facility going forward. And I think we can make that work from our side. Of course, this is a dialogue with you, so we just had initial dialogue with our council. They authorized me to come forward and talk to you guys, and then we'll go back and have that discussion with them to see what direction our council would like to head on for this. Of note is that we would be looking at this and hopefully receiving a capital request from the state. If we're not successful, then we'd be back at the drawing board. So we probably wouldn't move this forward at this time without that state money. Next slide, please. So getting into the actual renderings, so there's two options, a connected and a separated. And what I mean by connected is that it's immediately built onto the existing buildings. And in this aerial view, you have to bear with me a little bit. The consultant flipped it. So the top of the picture is south, the bottom is north, but it gives a pretty good orientation for their rendering so that everything's kind of lining up correctly. So you can see that some of the parking area would be taken away. The consultant also felt strongly that we'd probably want to revise the drive-in aisles and driveways a bit. So that's what's shown in the dark gray. That way, the way in leads you directly in front of this new entry feature. So next slide, please. So this is what their renderings would be. This would be the separated version, or the connected version, I'm sorry, of the entry. Next slide. Gives you a little different perspectives of this. To the right of the photo would be the outdoor dining area. Up above is some of the office space. And to the east of the building is that new exhibit space. But this would act as the new entry facility for the fairgrounds. Next slide, please. Again, just a little different perspective, but it gives you a feel for how it connects into the existing buildings. Next slide. And the all-important, what does it look like at night slide? And this is just a different viewpoint, but something that I think what's nice about these slides is that it really shows how the building would look from the parking lot and as you drive by on Broadway. And it really provides, I think, a different view from what is there currently today. Next slide. So this would be the separated version. It takes a little bit more parking, but it provides kind of a nice space in between the new building and the existing buildings. And that can be used for exhibit space and other things, and maybe future expansion or enclosure at some point years from now. So next slide, please. Again, same type of idea, office space up above with maybe a restaurant up there, meeting areas, similar to some of the spaces downtown Spokane, outdoor dining down below. Next slide. Same type of thing. We'd have to, the entryway isn't as prominent here, but that's something that can be worked on. Next slide. Next slide. Gives you a different little perspective of it. Really good view of the second floor meeting and socializing area. Next slide, please.
John, what's the estimated square footage of the building?
30,000 square feet.
Thank you.
So this gives you a good perspective of the separation between this new building and the existing. And in this photo, you have a trade show with construction equipment, and that can be displayed in this area. And again, this could be enclosed in the future depending on what the needs are for the facility. So next slide, please. So now we get into our financial analysis, and a lot of this work came out of the community attribute study, but then our finance director and our city manager, so finance director Chelsea Taylor and city manager, sorry, Mark Calhoun, have worked these numbers pretty dramatically. And so out of the study, we had a low attendance at 28,000, a high at 86, a little over 86, baseline at 57,000, and 8,300 room nights. Our estimated capital cost is 10 million. Our set aside in Fund 104, that's our lodging tax, additional 1.3, collections set aside at 2.9, potential state grant. So we'd be bonding about 4 million, and it comes out to be 255,000 annual payment. Let's go ahead, next slide, please. So this is what would be of interest for you. So out of our study, it looked like the revenue to the facility would be in the neighborhood of 460,000, so close to $500,000. The operating expenses were estimated at 445,000. So it's really kind of a wash on the revenue and operations. So that's really good news in a facility like this, that it's projected to bring in at least break even, if not make a little bit money on this. So for us, we're almost in a break even situation too. So our lodging tax usually brings in around 213,000. This is our estimated sales tax. So it gets really close to the bond payment. And so we feel really good that this is one of those projects that you could go forward. We know that our estimated numbers here for visitors and everything is very conservative. We try to be very conservative on all of our financial analysis. The big item is really down below, which we probably should have highlighted more, and that's estimated visitor spending in the city and within the area is close to $4 million a year. And I think on the low end, it was 2 million. On the high end, we're talking about around 6 million. So 4 million is pretty decent. And one of the reasons that we always gravitate this as city staff to this particular project is because it actually does bring in room night visitors. There's other studies or other proposals that we've studied that the link is harder to prove. But in this one, we felt really confident that this is something that definitely will pay off and will be a net positive for the region. So really, that's kind of the end of our pitch. I can answer any questions you may have on this particular item. And again, can't end without the night view on the report. So any questions you may have on it?
Okay. Any questions for John, Mary or Josh? Mary?
So yeah, so I do. So, and this is for Erin as well, based on your numbers with operating, I mean, I guess it's Erin to make sure that she's comfortable that based on the operating side, that's what she sees and how she sees it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I love the project, of course. I'm excited about the possible opportunity. And I think it would be, pretty easy for our team to take this on in addition to what we're already doing out here.
And then how does that with the baseball team, that's going to be kind of, so this is more, you're looking more at this as winter activities more than summer, just because, we're going to have if the baseball team is going to expand to more games, we're going to have issues that I'm learning, trying to coordinate with the fairgrounds and the stadium.
So I definitely see it would be utilized year round. One thing that does come to mind is that, we would need to look into improving our south parking lot area, which is currently a mixture of kind of a dirt gravel scenario, because we would be, utilizing that a lot more with all of the activities. If this extra, space is to come to fruition, the nice thing for us is there's scenarios where we have events moving in and moving out that take up a lot of the week, and we could have something else going on midweek in this additional space, or in addition, on the weekends where we already have activities going on.
Okay, so I wonder if maybe we want to put that, look at that additional parking as part of this overall structure, just so that way we can have it taken care of. Because I know in talking with the Spokane Indians, that baseball team, that as minor league baseball is changing, they may have more games, and so that's just trying, like I said, it's just going to be figuring that out, because that's something to pay attention to. And so maybe we need to look at what the cost of using that south parking lot would be, because then that would be an easy access for people to come in from the south end, go into that parking lot and get into the building as well.
Sure, that would be a great idea, and we can actually have some of our staff engineers work with Erin to develop a cost estimate, if that's okay with you guys on that. And really what I see is more baseball games means more
That's right,
people
this is-
attending the restaurant both before and after the event. So I think more games, more people, more revenues.
One of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, when we were looking at some of these different scenarios, the first impression people have at the fairgrounds, obviously, is when they get to the front gate. And I've always kind of tongue in cheek with Aaron that double wide mobile home isn't the best necessarily.
It's a triple wide, Jerry.
Excuse me, the triple
Yeah,
wide.
it's pretty fancy.
It is. So you guys have worked really well with it. But this is the entrance and kind of the anchor, you know, the first thing you see in first impressions. You know, it's pretty exciting just on that basis that something could be, you know, I'm going to go out to the fairgrounds of this facility. It has nothing to do with an event at the fairgrounds. I just got to go out there because I want to go out there to that structure. And that's where the year-round business cycle comes in. So it's pretty exciting. Although Erin wouldn't want to give up her triple wide to a new office, I'm sure.
No, I'm so comfortable here. I just couldn't change that. No, it would just all around be beautiful. I mean, we do receive a lot of great comments on our facility from other visiting fairs, but that would really, wow, it would knock us out of the park, definitely, with that.
Josh?
Oh, no, I was just going to say the triple wide, we can drag it around back, you know, and just, you know, and stash it back there. We got a lot of empty space back there, so we won't have to say goodbye to it.
You can take it over to
good.
Wilbert Vault, park it there.
Someone will take it. Slap a free
Yeah,
sign on
City
it.
Hall.
It'll be gone.
Oh, geez.
So in terms of the restaurant operation, then I'm assuming that the restaurant's going to have normal restaurant hours. So you're going to have a restaurant bar that's going to be open to the general public, as well as serving the needs of events on the fairground campus and stuff. So have you given any thought about that operation and how much of that 30,000 would be dedicated to restaurant bar operation?
Well, we have looked into that, and that was our hope that we didn't really come up with a set size yet of the facility, but we'd want to make sure it was good, big enough to make sure that it did provide the type of room that we anticipate. So I think we would have to study that a little bit more on a follow-up investigation as part of the design process of this building. But I think, you know, it's got to be substantial enough that you're not turning away people, but again, you don't want it so large that it's empty all the time. So I think that's something that we can definitely dive into if this looks like it's a favorable proposal for you guys.
So assuming that you've got a restaurant bar lounge operation that took up 5,000 square feet, would that 5,000 be something you'd carve out of the 30, or would that be 5,000 in addition to the 30?
It would be something we would carve out of the 30.
Okay. All right. Well, and obviously we'd have plenty of parking for them.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just about controlling the lot for after hours and stuff. So Aaron, does the parking lot stay open after hours when you don't have other events going on out there?
It does. It is accessible 24/7.
Okay. Okay.
Is this based off of what another community has done at their fairgrounds, or is this sort of a pretty sort of unique concept?
So if in the supporting detail that we passed on to Gina, there was a lot of different examples in there for different stadium districts, and one of the areas that they looked at a lot of different communities throughout the country, and these are typical to have some type of activity center or restaurant or bar near a stadium, and so yes, that information's in there. I'm not coming up with the specifics right now. It's been a while since I've actually looked at the study, but yes, that's what was the basis of the whole idea.
Okay.
So Aaron, one of the things that we've talked about for many, many years is finishing the horseshoe on the grandstand area and stuff. If you had the rest of that grandstand built out, Do you think that you would get more use out of it during the year?
I don't think so.
Okay,
hmm You know, as it is, the grandstand is a beautiful facility. It's not really necessarily the layout of it. It's more of what other activities are happening around the grounds already and how we can make the use of the grandstand work with, you know, say a horse show, goat show, or, you know, maybe up front you have Custer's Arts and Crafts. Or there's a scenario where there's baseball going on and we've got a monster truck show going in the stands at the same time. So it's just really always looking at the total use of the whole complex. But as far as, you know, everything's been, the current structure of the grandstands have worked out well for us.
okay. Okay, so Josh, Barry, where do you want to go from here?
So I guess I would like to have them look at the, you know, just do a kind of an estimate of the cost for the south parking lot to see if we could include that or not. And I think this is, you know, part of what we got to decide on our capital ask, you know, that this would then become part of our capital ask as well, to have it be a combined ask. So, I mean, I think it's a great project, and you know, I definitely want to look at it. So,
Okay, Josh?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a great project. You know, to also have Erin sort of stamp of approval too, means a lot to me. I mean, she's the one that knows the operations out there better than anybody. So yeah, I think we've you know, no pun intended here. I think we have a home run out there next to the stadium. So
Okay. So, John, you've got all three of us saying, yeah, we like it. So what's the next steps from your standpoint?
So we're going to go back to our council and relay this conversation that we had to them. And then we'll see if we get the vote to include it on our state capital request. And then I'll circle back with Jerry to let him know what that is. At the same time, irregardless of the outcome of our council moving forward or not on the agenda, we'll go ahead and take a look. I'll get one of the staff engineers here and get them working on some improvements. We'll coordinate with Erin on exactly where those should be, and we can come up with a conceptual plan and a cost estimate for that parking space. So we can go ahead and get that moving right now.
Okay. Well, looks like we've got the energy to move forward. Yes, Mary?
so when will you be able to know whether your council is on this? Just so.
Let me look. I think it's coming up next week, actually, on the 20th, October 20th, meeting the city council on that Tuesday night.
Okay, because I think we're trying to hopefully next week kind of our capital asks, you know, what we're looking at. So yes, let Jerry know.
I will email him that night.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good. All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Erin, for joining us and stuff.
Thank you.
We will revisit this probably next week. And so go forth and do great things. And everybody went away. There you are. All right. So next item up for discussion is MOU for Shrek. We've got Carrie and Mr. Maceo here.
Thank you very much, Chairman French. I have provided to Gina and Ron a copy of the resolution on this item and the MOU. This document has been prepared by Shrek's attorney and Spokane County's attorney. And the purpose of the MOU is to streamline the ability of Shrek to receive state 911 excise tax monies, which previously went to Spokane County, but under the MOU would go directly to Shrek. Shrek then uses these financial resources for its emergency communication system. As the board is aware, in 2018, the Board of County Commissioners created Shrek. purpose of SHREC is to assume the county's previous responsibilities for emergency communication as well as dispatch. At the time we created SHREC, we agreed to give SHREC on an annual basis a certain percentage of the 0.1% communication tax and a certain percentage of the 911 excise tax which Spokane County collects. With those monies, SHREC performs its responsibilities of emergency communications as well as dispatch. When Spokane County was providing those services, we also received money from the State of Washington Emergency Management Division. The money which we receive from the Emergency Management Division is a certain share of their 911 excise tax, which they receive and which they have imposed. The State of Washington Emergency Management Division cannot contract directly with SHREC in conjunction with making these monies available to Spokane County. But they have advised that if Spokane County and SHREC enter into an interlocal agreement under which the county gives to SHREC the ability to contract directly with the Emergency Management Division, they will recognize this agreement and then provide the money directly to SHREC. And so what we have in front of you today, Board of County Commissioners, is a resolution and a memorandum of understanding. And under the memorandum of understanding, Spokane County will authorize SHREC to enter into contracts with the State of Washington Emergency Management Division, under which SHREC will receive Spokane County's share of the state's 911 excise tax, which is imposed on access lines, and SHREC then will use that money to provide emergency management services. This agreement simply eliminates the county having to contract with the state emergency department and then having a separate contract with SHREC. As a result of this memorandum, SHREC can contract directly with the State of Washington Emergency Management Provision and eliminate some needless signing of contracts. This agreement has been reviewed by SHREC's attorney as well as by Mr. Kaufman and myself, and we're requesting that we place this MOU on the board's consent agenda for next Tuesday.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Maceo? Mary?
Yeah, I just want to be clear that, so this is just the states, we're doing this just so then the state and SHREC can go directly with the contract directly with each other. This isn't saying that we're giving up the budgeting of the 1/10 money to SHREC, correct?
That is correct, Mary. This money will then go directly to SHREC. It will not come to Spokane County, and it will be budgeted in their budget.
Okay, but that's just for this portion.
That is correct, Mary. This is the state's portion of the E911 tax. It is separate and apart from the county's portion. The county's portion is still budgeted as you have alluded to.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, Josh, any questions? So I didn't see any provisions in here for termination of this agreement.
Commissioner French, you ask a good question. There are no provisions there for termination, and let me tell you why not. The State of Washington Department of Emergency Management has been very prescriptive on what they will allow in these agreements. And so I thought about adding that language, Commissioner French, but it wasn't in the agreements that they have approved with other entities operating emergency management. I feel comfortable, however, that with the fact that we set up SHREC and that with our membership on the SHREC board, that if we needed to terminate this, we could do it by mutual agreement of the parties in the event that takes place.
Well, that's mutual agreement of the parties that we currently know. But if we're successful at bringing the city of Spokane into the mix, that mutual agreement might be a little bit more difficult to achieve.
That's a correct statement, Commissioner French. If it's the board's directive, I'm more than happy to add a termination provision in the document. And my sense would be we'd have to give, I would recommend we give 1 year's notification prior to the end of any calendar year, because generally speaking, the money from the state is on a calendar year. And once it's given, of course, people are going to budget for it.
Yeah, having experience in another consortium that didn't have provisions for an exit strategy, I'm reluctant to get into something that doesn't define how we can get out of it. I think at least one of my commissioners understands that. All right. So
Sure.
unless either one of you object, I'd ask that we have an exit strategy incorporated into the agreement as well.
Probably beneficial to have it spelled out in case it ever needs to be exercised.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman French. I'll add that language, and with your permission, I will place this document on the board's consent agenda for next Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
Okay, any objection? All right, very good. So then that gets us to CARES Act funding. Ms. Griddle, are you on the line with us?
Good morning.
There you
How is everyone today?
are. How are you, more importantly?
I'm good. I'm just quarantining myself so I don't, spread my germs if I, was exposed. So I'll be back probably this week sometime to torment you all.
Okay, we look forward to that.
No one more than me, Carrie.
I know, Mr. Gimmel, I know. I actually have Mr. Bigglesworth sitting on my lap right now, looking at the screen. So we have this morning, commissioners, we were going to review David Beard, I believe. And David, I believe you're on the line, are you not?
I'm here this morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good.
And commissioners will recall this was an ask for the Zoll products. And I believe David, there were particular questions. Is that correct to you?
That's how I understand it. Yes, there were some questions.
Yeah, so do you have any answers?
Well, the number one question that I recall was about other agencies in the county, and I offered to research that and was told that somebody in your group was going to do that. So I don't know where that was. I don't know if it was Carrie, if you were going to reach out to Fire District 8, Fire District 9.
No, we did, but we didn't hear back, commissioners, unfortunately.
Okay.
We haven't heard anything back. I think, David, you provided me with some information with regards to what an assessment looked like, correct? I'm trying to find my notes here on you had reached out to someone about what you estimated the cost was going to be beyond your specific request.
Right. I don't, for the proposal would be definitely a high end. We would not exceed that amount. We do not we would not exceed that amount of money. Once following the purchase of the equipment, if we were awarded this grant, we would be responsible then for any of the disposable equipment that would come up year to year. For example, the Auto Pulse has, to do the mechanical CPR, it has this strap that goes across the patient's chest. Those are a single-use item. So every time you use one, you have to dispose of it. The EMS world today, there's a lot of consumable products. So that would be on us to maintain that. The biggest ask for us for this would be mainly just to get this kind of the capital purchase of the big equipment which would be used for a number of years, probably 10 years or more would be my guess.
So David, you had indicated to me that to equip the entire county, not counting the city fire department, would cost an additional 4 million. I think that was the inquiry.
Oh, correct. Yeah, that would be, I would think so, because, fire districts 8 and 9 together are about the size of us. Actually, they might even be smaller. And then a number of the county departments do not provide paramedic service, so they would not be needing this equipment. And then Fire District 4 does provide paramedic at a very small level, and so does, I believe, Fire District 10 is just starting to, and Fire District 3. So yeah, I would think for an additional 4 million, we could equip the whole county if they wanted to change. Right now, most of the county uses a different brand of some of these products. Most of them use the Physio Control product. So they would have to agree to a change, and which might be a guess as to why you haven't heard from Fire District 8 or 9 is, and like us, we're happy with the current Physio Control product. It's just dated, and they have not been able to give us a date on when their new edition's coming out. They've been promising it to us for at least 5 years, and it's still a number of years away. So that's why, if we could make this happen, why Spokane Valley Fire would be willing to make us a change in equipment, in brand, I guess.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Baird or Ms. Carey? Your thoughts? Anybody?
I mean, I still have the same concern I did last time. Is I'd still like to hear from those other fire districts. I mean, it's disappointing they didn't return our phone calls, but I mean, the fact of the matter is they didn't return our phone calls, so we still don't have that answer from them. So I mean, I still would like to hear from them before we take a vote on this. And I'm sorry, Mr. Baird, you said it was an additional 4 million. So what would be the total overall cost if we were to equip the entire county, all the different fire districts then?
Again, just a guess, I would say 6 million.
6 for everybody.
Well, we're at 1 point. Our ask was for 1.7, so I'm just rounding up. I would say, I'd say it was 6, but that's totally a guess. That's without, I mean, could be less.
Okay. Yeah, I would still like to hear from the other districts. Just, I mean, that's a big question mark out there with a several $1 million price tag on it that I would like to know before we move forward on this.
So Dave, this is Carrie. So maybe you and I can chat this afternoon and try to pin everybody down on this, and then maybe reschedule this for next week again.
Sure, I can probably make, well, I can contact all these departments if need be today.
So why don't you and I chat after, like, say 1:30 today?
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Mary?
So one question I have, Dave, is to purchase this equipment, just because we've heard ordering issues, it's like, what's the time frame if from the time that we say go, when can you get the equipment? Because that's going to be one of the issues that we're starting to do.
Well, the Zoll vendor has said that they can provide the equipment. I know for us, they said they could have it here before the end of the year. Now, if we expand this, I don't know if that would still be possible. That's another person I can contact in my today on my list. But they have said they could make all this happen. We could get the equipment to us by the end of the year. Now, actually getting trained and having the equipment out to the public by the end of the year might be a bit of a stretch. That would all depend on how soon the equipment would actually get here. But if what is it? It's middle of October.
Right.
Yeah, if we had it by December 1, we could possibly put training together. At least I know our agency could. And depending on how much training it is, we would have it operational by 2021, by January of 21, probably February at the latest. But we would have possession of the equipment by the end of the year. I think that's probably a date that's critical, would be my guess. Am I right?
Well, that'd be a question for Carrie, but that's kind of what I'm starting to worry, is that we've got to make this decision sooner than later. You know, so as you talk to Carrie this afternoon, those will be some of the questions that you'll want to make sure that we, you know, she's talks through with you to make sure that then it meets the CARES criteria for the funding by the end of the year. Because I'm not sure if it's got to be operational. I think it does. So, but that's, I'm going to talk to Carrie about that when you talk to her this afternoon. And then, yeah, let's just make this, if the decision has to be made more quickly, then I guess, you know, maybe even come back tomorrow if there's some way that we could do that. Just because I'm concerned as we're getting to the end here on timing.
Well, would it be possible to, I guess, have approval for up to the 6 million, and then whatever agencies choose to come in, and it would be, you know, it would be that much or potentially even less. I know there is some reluctance in the EMS community, in the local community, probably to get away from the physio control products because it's so comfortable. It's like if you've driven a Ford your whole life and someone wants to give you a Chevy, you still kind of want to drive the Ford because it's what you know. But that might expedite the process a little bit. And then all we have to do is get clarification from those people that yes, they want in, or no, they don't.
Like I know for me, it's like it's hard for me to jump from 1.6 or whatever yours was to 6 million, not knowing what the true need is out there, and knowing that some have improved their equipment over time as well. So I don't know what their, you know, that's why, I mean, we do need to see what the need is and you know, the availability of that.
Yeah, I totally understand going from 1.6 something, 1.7 roughly to 6 is that's a big jump. But I can, I don't know, I'll make the phone calls today. I'll make them as soon as you're done with me here. I will start dialing them up, and I can hopefully have answers in the next couple of days as long as I can talk to somebody, you know, from the different agencies, which I do have agency contacts in all the different departments. So,
yeah, and one other question I had is that the city of Spokane Valley has had their CARES dollars, and you know, you service that area, and I know there was no ask to the city of Spokane Valley. Was there a reason why you didn't want to ask them for any CARES dollars?
Because I don't view the Spokane Valley Fire Department as the city of Spokane Valley's fire department. We're the county's fire department, so that's why I did not go towards to the county or the city of Spokane Valley, because we also serve Liberty Lake, Millwood,
Right.
Otis Orchards, and you know, so that's why.
Okay, thank you.
So if not for the CARES funding, you would be including this equipment replacement as, you know, one of your levy requests. Is that right?
Well, we would try. We've, you know, would be viewed as a capital purchase, and all of our capital purchases have been put on hold because of COVID. We were planning on another fire station and a couple of fire engines, and all that has been on hold. So, knowing that those are probably a little more pressing than the new equipment, this equipment probably gets pushed down a number of years. But yes, we would budget for it. And likely we would stay with the older product and just piecemeal,
Right.
you know, as we go, which not ideal, but that's probably how we would do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Susan, Josh, and Mary? Very good. Thank you, David. So next one is Jim.
Good morning, team. Guys have been busy, another week and lots of change for everyone, I'm sure. Thanks for asking me back. I've had a chance to go after some of the answers you were looking for from last week's meeting. The good news is, yes, Mount Spokane and the ski areas in Washington State will open. Couple things just to follow up with that. Precedence by Crystal Mountain over on the west side has been open and operating since May. Really seeing similar crowds and being able to contain within their county phases has kind of been their operating plan, and there were no shutdowns by the governor's task force, so that's certainly kind of the gold standard for us. The governor's task force was contacted by our local association, Pacific Northwest, which takes in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. Still no indication that we wouldn't open. So, and then Dr. Lutz actually reached out to his contact on the task force, again, confirming that as long as we're following our county's phased opening approach, there's no reason that we wouldn't be operating the ski mountain. So, and on top of that, it's supposed to be a great snow year, and so there is demand. KHQ just reached out today wanting to know, is the mountain opening? So that tomorrow morning, I am officially announcing we are opening, which is, you know, not that we weren't, but I feel like we're well down that rabbit hole, and I don't think there's any kind of turning around from it. Pertaining to the ask, there were some components that we couldn't meet the deadline on, which understandable. So I kind of went back to the drawing board, having heard a little of your comments, talking to Carrie, and just understanding the process a little more. And so you'll see as I walk through it, and I'll be quick just to keep timeliness to fashion. They're all things that are short-term fixes for COVID, but additionally, long-term fixes for Mount Spokane as well. And that's the old one. Is that the old one right there? I'm not sure who's popped that graphic up. Carrie,
Yes, there's a new one that I sent to Gina last week that should be in the system.
Yeah, that's the old one.
That's the old one. The
So
new
while
one.
she's pulling that up, the containers is still the number one way for us to outsource and get outside activities going. There's 3 containers we're buying. One is our rental container. It allows us to move all the snowboards and skis outside and double the booting area inside. And that's, again, a long-term fix for us. We're purchasing kind of a prefab food and beverage container that's set up with electrical, workspace, and refrigeration, and it just plugs in and it's ready to go. And that's a huge solve for some of our traffic that we see on the weekends already, but specifically knowing that we need to push that traffic outside, it gives us an additional service area, knowing that we're 50% capacity indoors. And then we just still need storage. We pulled out, we probably got another 25–30% of our equipment that we have to continue to pull out to get to 50% capacity. So storage containers will be a huge asset for us short-term and long-term. We decided to revamp our point of sale, which is one of the newer components that I was looking at. And that basically allows us to switch over to Squarespace, and then customers can order online and off of their phones, which will expedite their ability to service them versus them having to walk straight up to a point of sale. So it's going to give us 2 or 3 different access points. We'll be able to do those takeout orders and just take them to a pickup spot right at the doors versus having them to walk into the lodge. Again, just trying to figure out how to service the same number of people with half the space. On the equipment side and menu product development, it's kind of a package deal, but Some of our equipment's 25, 30 years old. We try to get as much out of it as we can. It was kind of slated in the next year to be doing some of this updating, but if we can get that equipment this year, again, it's just going to help us be twice as efficient with our prep work and our ability to service the customer quicker, knowing that we have to get half of that food to outdoor locations. We just need to be able to prep it quicker. So it's refrigeration, it's a couple of ovens, and some things that just make us much more efficient. The grab and go go ahead.
Jim, just to make sure we've got the right schedule on the screen, what's the new dollar amount for your request now? Is it the 269.5 or is it 362.7?
This is the one that's up on the screen is the one that I revamped for Carrie and gave to her.
Okay.
And the reason it's higher is I looked at it from a little different angle, and also from the things that had longer term impacts. If you recall, we had about $60,000 in that was labor just to deal with COVID. So I retweaked it. You guys had a question about the buses last time, and when I went and priced them out and availability, I ended up with going, instead of 4, going with 3 that had a little larger capacity and would help us long term, but that were also available. And I put the dates of everything that we can get deliverables on. And so most of it I went through the last time. The bigger ask was the signage. We realized we want to sign and have available when guests drive into the parking lot, actually have wellness check documentation for them, so they get handed a thing right at their car so that they check themselves before they even get out of the car. Really having that signage presence in the parking lot, masking signage on the buildings, indoors and outdoors, and the lift lines and at the top of the mountain too. Just reminding people how important it is to follow our guidelines and keep us open for the whole season and make it safe for all of the guests that want to have a great experience. I think the biggest one was the restaurant equipment, and actually that bid is low. They did the final one yesterday when they were getting the deliverables. I believe by the time we're said and done, if we get this, we're still going to be putting about $50,000 to $80,000 in labor and miscellaneous and unknown. So it's not, there's still expenses for us, but I believe these are all short-term, long-term fixes that will help us get through COVID too. And I can dive into more detail, or I can let you ask a question, whichever is best for you.
Any questions for Jim?
Well, I guess I want to start with Carrie and ask Carrie on this if she thinks this all meets code. I can say, just going down the list, it's interesting that we've increased it. I was having a hard time with the 269, but I'm going another 100,000 up. And so part of it for me is, we haven't looked at, we've done our nonprofits through the small, business grants and the nonprofit grants. So trying to identify why this is different. And again, you're a nonprofit, and trying to make sure that we're keeping our community safe for skiing, because I think that's going to be the next thing as we see people go to, just like we saw in the summer when people going to the lakes, we're going to see people going to their ski condos. And so I see how this fits into keeping our community safe. Like the race team tent, I don't see how that's, COVID related for our greater community. That's for a specific group. So those are the things I'm wrestling with in my head as to why and how and all of that. So I guess, and knowing that the CARES dollars are for the end of the year, that, it's kind of, I'm, trying to figure out, that. So Carrie, I guess just help me identify that this is, valid CARES first.
Well, sure, Commissioner. So really honestly, if it's expenditures related to allowing a business open safely for social distancing purposes, I think these expenditures would be valid under the CARES Act funding. I think, Jim, you can talk about the race team tent, because I think it's a misnomer somewhat, and you explained that, I think, a little better in your description to me.
Yeah.
And it was based on social distancing, and it wasn't just for the race team, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, yeah, I can dig in on that a little. So everything here is taking indoor services and moving them outdoors. So even the lockers, we've removed all the lockers so that we can keep people in lines and social distancing and have them indoors where it's warm. So we've taken out all the peripheral accessories that suck up square footage. So lockers, for example, move outside. But the race team tent and adaptive skiers, those are just two specific groups. However, Lodge 1, we're going to be operating that 7 days a week. Typically, it was closed midweek. But again, because Lodge 2, our main lodge, is only at 50% capacity, on those cold days and inclement weather days, we need to have additional space because most people won't want to base themselves out of their vehicles, although that's going to be the new norm as well. But with Lodge 1 open, and specifically on our peak weekends, we were looking at the race team uses that lodge typically. So in order to give them a safe space and also allow our customer base to spread out, we were purchasing this tent that's a 5 and 10 year long tent for them to use that, which gives customers more space to stretch out in the Lodge 1 itself. And that's the same with the adaptive skiers. They preferred the yurt versus having a tent, just because they have smaller groups of people, and those were our options with materials that we already use. The tent itself can also be used in our summer for some of our nonprofit work, and also weddings and so forth. So there's a year-round use for that tent, as well as the yurts for that matter. But at this point, they're COVID driven, trying to get those crowds, peak crowds, into their own unique spaces. And also from our staffing time, we have 300 plus employees. We'll be adding about 10 to 15 employees just to get to 7 days a week, plus another 5 to 8 probably to help us manage our COVID zones. And so we'll probably be up around 340 to 345 people by the time the season's done. And we are looking for, again, moving most of the peripheral equipment out so we have indoor spaces for our staff as well. But predominantly race team and adaptive are to give relief on Lodge 1. And the number went up predominantly. The containers, I was able to drill down and find some that were a little more ready-made, so we didn't have to do all the work in-house ourselves. And this is a lot to bite off before we start, which the starting day, if we have snow, would be November 29th, and then it goes on a weekly basis depending on the snow conditions. But with any luck, we'll be starting the first week in December. Is kind of what it's looking right now with La Nina prediction.
That's when your open date would be?
November 29th, Black Friday would be the official date if there were snow, and then we would typically open the next Saturday or the following. So I think it's the 5th or 11th, those first 2 weekends. As long as there's snow, we'll open.
Okay. I have a question around the shuttle buses,
Yep.
the parking shuttle bus. So you said you're going with 3 rather than 4, and these 3 have more capacity than the other 4
Yep.
did. But the 3 additional drivers, so that's about in that $84,000 figure. That's about $58,000 then for the labor of the drivers. And
No,
so
I'm still kind of getting familiar with, so that's tax is kind of what I was thinking. And then I realized as a nonprofit, we probably don't have tax. So that number will probably go down. It's 26.
Oh, it's 26,000 for each.
Yeah,
Oh, because okay, because that when you were looking at the smaller ones, those were 10,000 apiece.
exactly. That's what I said. I just
Oh,
changed it,
gee,
and they
okay.
weren't available, the ones that we got before. So when I went
Okay.
on and again, that was just a detail I hadn't dug into at our previous meeting. So yeah, it would be 3 at 26.
Okay.
And again, those are 5
Okay.
and 5-year plus solutions for us.
Okay. I was
That we
thinking
come
it was 26 for all three, since the
Yeah.
other ones were 10 apiece.
No,
So
I
was
just put in there that we'll have
Okay.
3 additional drivers for the season to
Okay.
show we're actually adding quite a bit of employment opportunity as well with some of this additional spaces, because each outdoor space will require an additional employee as well, which because normally it would be covered within the lodges themselves. So I feel like it's adding employment as well as kind of longevity for the ski resort, or, for Mount Spokane nonprofit. Any other questions? Go ahead, Al.
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask my fellow commissioners if they had any other questions for you. Mary?
Actually, it's more for, what are your thoughts, Al?
Well, I like you, I was struggling at the 269, and now I'm looking at 362 and having trouble trying to justify some of this stuff. So I'm still wrestling with it, quite honestly.
Well, the few things I could say that if the number's not where you need to be, like the containers and the restaurant equipment are probably the top 2 priorities in my book, and signage. But we could figure out an option without the shuttle buses, which would take off 84, and maybe absorb the product development in-house. If it's a total number thing. But like I say, most of these, we've got to find solutions for regardless. And coming off of COVID is really just stretching us out. So this would give a huge amount of relief to make sure we can service the public that are planning on coming up. And it's about 127,000 skiers a year that we service up here at Mount Spokane, which 95% of that are locals using the resort.
So why did the signage increase so much? You went from 4,000 to 25,000, 35.
So we decided to put it out on the slope and then just be a lot more aggressive with it. And again, it's robust, yes, but we're in a winter environment and everything kind of needs to be, if it's outdoors, it's just a little more spendy to get that signage built out. That's a rough estimate on that number, but that's taking it and getting it out at each of the lifts. We have the 6 lifts at the top and the bottom. And again, trying to be really aggressive to make sure that people aren't taking advantage of the mountain, and again, in the sense of wearing masks where it's appropriate, and just pushing our signage to what it needs to be to make it safe.
So, Jim, how many ski passes have you already sold for this coming year? And then what are you expecting on a daily basis? Because you say 120,000 visitors per year, but what's kind of your daily count? And kind of if you're opening 7 days a week, is that, how is that helping, or is that hurting you to open?
So let me talk about passes. So season passes are right on cue. We have another month and a half of pass sales, but we did do a lot of catching up over in the last stretch of sales. Daily ticket sales are probably about a third, a little more than that. Just under half, probably 45% is what we accommodate for on daily pass sales of that 125,000. But
so how many a day do you see?
So on a weekend, it would be around 3,800 on a typical weekend. We're running with Dr. Lutz's kind of approval, going to run around 80% until we see what the mountain pinch points are, and limit the daily ticket sales to around 1,500. And that's, again, 45% are daily ticket sales, 55% are typically season pass sales. So the other element is high schoolers and children have their afternoons free. So we're really starting to ramp up our marketing to get to those schools and PE programs to offer some afternoon lesson packages and try and drive some of that youth energy and free time and bring that up here. It's only 45 minutes away. It's where a lot of people have learned to ski for their first time. And I believe we can kind of take a different approach than we have in the past and really activate that age group to come up and participate and have exercise kind of built into their daily or weekly routine.
Any other comments? Mary or Josh?
Well, I think we need to try to make a decision because, again, I think we're kind of getting to the point of, to get things ordered and in place, we need to make a decision to do that. So when you said 3,800 on a weekend, is that each day on a weekend or?
Yeah, when typically Saturday, Sundays are between that 35 and 38, and we pack the parking lot out. And my goal is to drop those weekend traffic days down slightly by monitoring and allocating the daily tickets and having some of that traffic pushed to the midweek. That right now is my biggest concern, is that we would max our parking lot out on a Saturday, which I am not intending to do, which is why we're trying to monitor how many tickets we sell and pre-sell them. Basically, everything will be online this year, which is also a bit of a cultural shift, but I feel like we're right in the right spot at the right time. Industry-wide, people are going that way.
To do that. So I don't know where my fellow two commissioners would land, but I would, I guess, one thought I'm having is just to say, we got 170,000, which gets kind of in between, gets your other list, but, doesn't fully fund this list. Again, probably because, we're not contributing to all the nonprofits. I mean, that's one of the issues. And like I said, I'm trying to look at it that you're unique, and this is where I'm going to be concerned. Everyone thinks they're unique, but, you're providing something that's happening here in our county that we need to make sure we're keeping people safe when they do it. If we've got, even 3,500 or 3,000 people on a weekend, that's a lot of people that we need to ensure are staying safe and not spreading the virus.
Right.
So.
Well, that's a great number for us to work with, and I can certainly appreciate that.
Mary, you blanked out when, what was the number?
Yeah, you did cut out there. I missed it too.
Oh, did I? 270,000. Kind of right at the top of the first ask, but hopefully it incorporates then, Jim's looked at it to know based on that first ask versus this ask where those real needs are. But we would fund that amount.
Yep, that would be great. I can make that work.
The first amount.
Yeah. So, Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I wanna help you guys out. What would that take off of this list then? What would that get you?
Well, let me just do some quick math. So probably what I would drop is the shuttles, and I would, and then maybe the tents or the signage would go down a hair. What's that differential there, just so I get it in my head? -3, 92,000, yeah. Yeah, if I just took the parking shuttles off, I could probably do everything else, which would be fine. And I can figure out if we can do something different in that parking lot. We may just go, yeah, I could do that.
I guess my number was a little bit less aggressive. I was at 144, taking the 3 items that you had, the specialty containers, restaurant equipment, and signage. I'm thinking of things that can last beyond the end of the year, assuming the majority of the season is first part of next year as opposed to this year. So, I was going with your cut down estimate. The other part of it for me is if we get any pushback, I'd rather pay back 144 than 270. But assuming that Carrie can manage this, hopefully we don't have to pay back anything. But so Josh, we're back to you.
I guess just to confirm with Carrie that this is all, the 270, you don't see any issue with that.
Sorry, Josh, I can't figure out technology today to unmute myself. No, I don't. I think
Okay.
the one thing that we talked about is ensuring that it would be used this year. I mean, we're all taking a risk that if it doesn't snow, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're looking at the dates that he provided, that equipment can be delivered prior to that. And even if it's in use for 2 weeks, it's within the contract period. So pray for snow by the middle of December would be the biggest risk I think that the commissioners, y'all would be taking. I think we can make the argument from December 1, on, or even the middle of December, as long as the items are put into use during the contract period. I think we have a very slim liability with regards to payback.
If we didn't get snow until the 1st of January, or even for that matter, the end of December, we could be in a position where we might have to pay it back, couldn't we?
That would be correct, because all items have to be put into use during the contract period before December 30, by December 30th.
Well, all of that stuff would be technically in use before, public wouldn't be here, but we would be operational and having everything in place for operations. I don't think we've ever opened later than after, I think a day or two after Christmas in our history. We've always been open, is my understanding.
And again, I think for me, it's the fact that, if we've got 3,500 people on a weekend at a facility, I'm concerned about that. So I guess that's why I see this as a safety, protecting our public and keeping them safe so we don't spread the virus.
Okay, so Josh, you want to throw a number out there and make a motion?
Sure. Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize up to $270,000 of CARES dollars for expenditures related to COVID relief and the operations of Mount Spokane Ski Mountain.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We'll have a safe ski season and open as soon as there's snow. Appreciate your support.
You bet. Take care.
Take care.
All right, so next item, Sarah Spear with Daybreak.
Hello, thank you so much for letting us present today. I'm Sarah Spear, I'm the Director of External Relations for Daybreak Youth Services.
Good morning.
And how are you? Good. Great, so I'm sure you probably have our proposal, but I'm here today to talk about the isolation unit that Daybreak had to create from the period of July 18th through August 8th. and the expenditures that we incurred doing so. So on July 18th, we had a massive COVID outbreak within our all-female residential treatment facility here in Spokane. We serve girls 12 to 18 who are struggling with mental health disorders and substance use disorders. We also have a suicide and evaluation treatment unit, and all of our units were closed down, and half of our clients in-house ended up contracting COVID, as well as our staff and our staff's family members as well. And so for a 3-week period of time, Daybreak continued to serve the mental health and substance use needs, as well as run an infectious disease unit with half the clients with COVID. And during that time, we were in quite a unique position because the youth we serve are some of Spokane's most vulnerable. 85% are Medicaid-based, low-income families. When we originally had the first COVID test come back positive from our staff, we were told and instructed that we could release some of the youth, but the regional health district would like us to keep them. So it was apparent that there was no youth serving capacity in the isolation unit that you all have set up. And when we called some of the guardians, the social workers, and the parents, nobody was equipped to deal with a COVID positive or a COVID probable youth. So at that point, Daybreak transformed the entire facility and shut down the suicide unit to transform that into our COVID positive wing. And then our SUD co-occurring side became a COVID probable and a COVID negative unit. And our staff, as you can imagine, who are, I want to just mention, behavioral health technicians and not infectious disease nurses, did a tremendous time, but had a very, very hard 3 weeks transforming our unit into this capability to do this. And so the total expenditures for that 3-week period of time amounted to $103,949.
Okay, any questions for Sarah?
Yeah, so hi, Sarah. So Sarah reached out to me and we talked through this because, you know, the health district was supposed to be providing isolation, but finding out it's kind of for youth, unless they were with their adults, you know, there wasn't isolation. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, some of the people in your facility, it's a lockdown facility. I mean, they're not allowed to leave. So, I mean, so it wasn't like some are court ordered to be there. So there wasn't a place for them to go. And so, and I know the original request came in, you know, much higher, and we talked about that it really couldn't be for lost revenues or any of that, but could only be for isolation, which, you know, we've committed to with the health district. So, so I'm okay with this ask because I think it truly is for the isolation that they have for youth that, I know talking to Amelia, you know, we're trying to figure out what that is, you know, going forward, but for some of these girls, you know, this was the only place they could isolate them, so. Yeah.
Okay, Josh, you have any comments?
I mean, hearing the situation on what happened, I mean, this is, I mean, kind of one of those situations where I guess we didn't, you know, at the EOC and I mean, and through the health district, I don't think we ever discussed, you know, if it was, you know, a youth that needed isolation. I mean, it's just sort of one of those things that wasn't really discussed, you know. So, yeah, it sounds like this. I mean, this certainly falls under the guidelines of CARES. I mean, it's certainly, you know, COVID related and expenses that were incurred due to caring for these individuals during a COVID outbreak. So yeah, no, I'd support this.
Okay, so open to a motion then.
Just a second, I have a question for Carrie, quick though. Like on the wages and overtime, that Carrie, you'll make sure that they do the time and effort that's necessary.
That That would be correct. We'll be sending out, when we send the contracts out to any of the organizations, Mary, we send out time and effort certs, and they're only reimbursed when those come back. We have a number of contracts that we've been working with for the time and effort certs and the backup in order
Okay.
to pay them. So that won't be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize expenditures of CARES dollars up to the amount of $104,000 to cover the costs related to COVID-19 in the operations of Daybreak Youth Center as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve the request for Daybreak. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your support and help.
You betcha. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
That brings us back to Spokane Alliance. Request for childcare support for the industry. We briefed on it last week. Wanted to spend some more time on it. We do have a couple of representatives from Spokane Alliance joining us. Can you?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner French. I'm Katie Zindler. I'm the lead organizer with the Spokane Alliance. And since we've presented, a number of us have had conversations with Carrie to update the proposal and just to put some more meat on the bones, as you might say. So wanted to draw your attention just to a number of things. One is that community-minded enterprises, which works very closely with childcare centers in the region, have been told that around 90% of the providers have the ability to increase their capacity at this current time, not increase their license capacity, but go up to what their license capacity is, so they can serve more families if they had more support. The specific proposal that we've made could increase the number of spaces for at least 1,400 children through reimbursement to providers. And in addition, the direct subsidy for families could provide assistance for an additional 1,200 to 2,000 families. So Carrie again has confirmed that the expenditures are permitted under the federal guidelines of CARES, and she supports them. And just again wanted to remind the group, I don't think that anyone from GSI could be here today, but but that GSI is supportive of this proposal, especially because of the critical role that childcare plays in our economy. And the last point we just wanted to reinforce is that these funds could definitely be spent before the deadline at the end of the year, and would be an investment in these childcare centers so that come the end of the year, they could be running at higher capacity, and would be an investment in families so that come the end of the year, they would have some income coming in so that they could continue to be at work and continue to have their kids in a childcare setting. So those are the points we wanted to underscore, open to questions and some further conversation. Thank you.
So is the request now for $1 million, or is it still $1 million plus 3 for a total request of $4 million?
The request is, I think if you scroll, I don't know who's controlling the screen, scroll all the way down, there's a summary of the request. It's now a total of 4.2 million. So
Okay.
just under 3 for the centers, 1 million for families, directly to families, and then and then some funds for the administration of the grant as well. I should clarify that we acknowledge that there was some conversation about the need for additional PPE for childcare centers, and that both the county or GSI has some capacity to bring to bear in that respect. So we took those specific items out of the funding request, and would again, would love some further conversation on what the best way to have those needs met through the systems that you all have set up.
Okay. So questions, either Mary or Josh? So Carrie, you've been through the request and you're comfortable with it?
I guess I've got some questions first. So the state, I thought the state just announced that they're going to do $78 million in child care that they're going to be distributing to child care providers. And so how does that affect this, since some of the local providers will be getting this? And I know, talking to Senator Billig here recently as well, that there was funds that came down early on as well for child care. So so I'm having a little bit harder time on the that side of it. I don't have a problem at all on funding scholarships, which is similar to what we did with the schools, is to getting those scholarships and helping those families that need that help, for that. So I think that's one of the issues that I'm, struggling with. And I wasn't able to get a full listing of the businesses, so I could see which businesses actually applied for the grant that we did through GSI, and who actually has gone to get PPE supplies from the 2 times that we gave them out at the fairgrounds. So that was one of the things that, whether it's you guys or us, I don't have a problem. I would like a list to know who actually went after those grants to try to get those versus who didn't, and then how the state funding, who has received state funding versus who hasn't, and then what that additional $78 million is going to look like.
Yeah, I'd be happy to respond to that. So there were, I believe, like $59 million allocated to provider grants back several months ago. And that was great. However, a place like Parkview, who serves 99, or who is licensed for 99 kiddos, only got a grant of about $10,000. And so that money only covered about, actually less than 1/10 of 1 month's payroll. And while providers really appreciated that money, it went a lot further to help family home providers, because proportionally the per head amount that was given, I guess, between family home providers versus center providers, it was significantly higher for family home providers. So that was a huge help for the family home community, but the provider community didn't get nearly the same impact from those grants. And so there has been a lot of advocacy around getting this $78 million. And again, we're really grateful to the legislature and to DCYF and the governor's office for making that happen. But again, we have heard that if the grants do go to providers, it is likely that it'll only be a portion of that $78 million. Part of that will be used for subsidies, I believe, or to waive child co-pays, which is all taken into account in our proposal. But the grants are more than likely to go to providers that have closed, and they're supposed to be reopening grants. So the currently open providers that need those funds won't necessarily benefit, or if they do benefit, it will be a smaller amount like it was the first time around that won't serve the purpose that we are trying to serve through this proposal, which is a meaningful amount of money that will have more of an impact than just paying for 1/10 of 1 month's payroll.
I might say too, as part of our process, when we are going through the process of having programs provide an application to us, we do ask them to identify if they've gotten any other funds. And if so, to also agree that what they are receiving is paying for different things than those funds were for. We set up that system when we dispersed and are still dispersing city cares funding. So we have the ability to add that in as a question into our application.
Okay.
How many facilities do you envision this the 2.95 million going to assist? I mean, and I guess I know it's difficult to know because they have to apply, they have to approach, to get it. But I mean, ballpark, what's your best guess on how many of the providers would that go to assist?
I believe that
If you can scroll up on this proposal, actually, it'll show that breakdown.
It does show that.
To the first page or the second page, I believe. Thank you so much. So it would be a total of 206 grants, both to child care centers and also family providers. This is a rough draft of one of the ways that it could be distributed based on the current providers in the county and their capacity.
Okay. Any other questions, either Josh or Mary? So what would be
I
your?
have a quick question for Catherine. You said you guys are licensed to have up to 99 kids. How many kids do you currently have?
So we have, because we don't necessarily have to have all of those kids in the building at one time, we have over 100 that we serve now, including our expanded school age capacity.
How many did you have back in January, pre-COVID?
So we shifted the demand shifted, and so we accommodated the shift in demand. I don't know the numbers back in January, but we have had a really hard time enrolling for a few preschool slots, specifically our virtual learning preschool slots. So the demand for preschool did go down, but the demand for school age skyrocketed. And so that's why we ended up investing tens of thousands of dollars in our school age program to accommodate that shift in demand, and then also to accommodate their virtual learning.
Okay. So, but number of kids, you're probably sitting about the same, or maybe more, but just it's a different age group demographic.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I would say for us right now, but we've definitely had to spend a lot to make that happen. And luckily for Parkview, we do have a pretty diverse business, or we have a hybrid business model. And so we've got sort of a unique set of funding streams, but I would say that we're pretty unique for the industry. Most centers or facilities don't have the same ability to make the investments that we've been able to make and be sustainable.
Okay.
And a question on the administration of the grant. So, so Spokane Alliance, I mean, are you guys equipped to handle grants? I know Community Minded Enterprises is, and so kind of the
yeah.
I guess I'm thinking I'm more comfortable if it's all going through Community Minded Enterprises. Lee may have a difference of opinion on that, but
we are in complete agreement, Commissioner. We are not applying for this funding to go through the Spokane Alliance. It's it's not an area of expertise of ours. It is for the community-minded enterprises. We've put forward the proposal because it's a priority for us, but working with community-minded because they have experience doing this and specifically most recently with the city giving out similar types of grants.
And how much did the city do for childcare grants?
They, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lee.
Oh, it was 161,000 was the original amount. And they are going to give us an additional 161,000.
Okay, and then the basis for these grants are countywide, correct?
Correct. So we would prioritize those that had not gotten funding through city. Get these funds first.
Okay.
So you would take care of the unincorporated county business owners first?
Yes.
Thank you.
Has that 161,000 from the city been spent?
Yes, it has. We actually
It has.
spent it quite quickly.
Okay.
Yes.
And if I could just add, just to put that amount in perspective, the grant that Parkview applied for and received was for $3,000. And again, as much as we are grateful for the city's investment into childcare, that would cover, I guess, 1/30 of 1 month's payroll. So great to get those funds, but piecemealing these really small grants together it's very difficult, and that's why we want to have these very meaningful grants as opposed to little bits of funding here and there.
Okay, any other questions, either Mary or Josh? What would be your pleasure?
What are your thoughts, Al? We haven't heard you chime in yet.
Well, knowing I've got a little bit of background with the childcare industry and stuff from my neighborhood days and stuff. So, I can clearly empathize with kind of the condition that they're in, and especially as we try and get kids taken care of and stuff. So, I guess I'm okay with I was okay with the 4 million. I guess I'm okay with the 4.3. Carrie feels comfortable she can administer the funds and that they qualify. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. Can you can whoever's operating it scroll to the total dollar amount just so I get it right?
Carrie,
I want to ask Carrie a couple of questions before we go.
Yeah. So Carrie, you there? Carrie?
I'm here.
Okay,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So just trying to figure out, so on the grant administration, I mean, and looking at this, I want to make sure that you're comfortable being a former grants auditor. With that.
Commissioner, I think that's what, about 7%. Lee, can you give me kind of an idea? It's about 7.5% for admin on this. Is that correct?
You figured out, yes.
So that's well within the admin ask on this to oversee this project. Again, if it's staff time, I'll be working with Lee to do time and effort certs or things like that the community-minded enterprises will incur. So I don't have a problem with the grant admin because it's going to take some time to oversee a project like this. So I feel it's reasonable. It's request to ask for 7.5.
Okay, and then
Commissioner, I think, sorry, I think the other thing is that on the PPE, we'll be working with Cindy Wendell and others to ensure that we cover some of that. That's not included. They, I think, believe, if I'm not mistaken, Catherine, you took the PPE out, request out. And so we'll be working with our roll up in our purchasing department and then Cindy in working with the county on this. So I think we can cover the PPE.
Well, and wasn't, the PPE was included last time, but our dollar amount for the ask is larger this time, is that correct?
I believe so, yes. Catherine, can you talk about that, or Lee, one of you?
I mean, that's where I'm confused on all this, because again, since we know we're going to see additional funds coming down from the state as well, I don't know. And it's not just you guys. I mean, I have a frustration that everybody has an initial ask and they come back and ask for more, and take less, you know, I don't know. So that's a little frustration I'm having, you know, so anyway, and knowing, you know, like I said, that there's a $78 million that's now going to be coming back down, I'm struggling a little bit. So I don't know that I'm for the full 4 million. I'm for something a little less than that, but that's kind of where I'm at, because I'm struggling, you know, again, the tuition grants, I completely agree with, I fully support. And I know we have a lot of other businesses that are struggling with getting piecemeal grants, you know, through the city of Spokane Valley, through the city of Spokane, through GSI. And that's just kind of what's happening right now with our local businesses, which is just tough. But I know that's a piece I'm just with, is how we've taken PPE out of this and now we've increased the dollar amount.
Can I ask,
Yeah,
Commissioner CUNY, would you feel more comfortable today doing the tuition grants and, you know, some amount for administration, and then having us do a little more research on the 78 million from the state, and then bringing up the provider grants next week or the week after?
Yeah.
Once we know more about the 78 million, then?
I think I'd be okay with that, or I'd be okay doing a lesser amount for the business provider grants at this point in time, and not, you know, because again, I think that 78 million we just recently learned about, so that's new. You know, so maybe having you guys take a look at that to see what the real ask, you know, would be, you know, for that.
Well, so I just wanted to chime in on the state money, and just to clarify, the way that we had targeted this proposal was for childcare centers that are operating right now and have capacity to expand given their current license capacity. It sounds like a lot of the grants from the state are going to go to centers that are currently closed. So it's a very different targeting. One of the other aspects that we have acknowledged here in the grant is that the state has waived co-pays for state subsidized families through the end of the year. However, you know, as you all understand, the threshold for state subsidy is important, but there's a cliff, and so there's a lot of families who still, you know, need some support to be able to go back to work and have their kids taken care of. And so our proposal, part of that would be to subsidize, to basically to make up the gap between what state subsidy would be and for those families that are living and working right at the edge.
That's with the $1 million, correct?
The $1 million and part of the money to the centers. So the centers get some money from the state for a state subsidized family. So sorry, those are two different things. Part of that, yes, would be the kids, the family tuition, and the other part would be going to provide to centers to just make up that gap for the families that don't qualify for the subsidy. So just kind of two different ways of getting the funding to target the same group of families.
Okay, I guess that's more confusion for me than helpful. I apologize. So
I might have butchered that, Catherine, if you want to clarify.
So it's just such a complex industry, so it's so hard to explain. But yeah, so child care providers do receive subsidized funding from the government. And so what part of what they're doing with the $78 million, most, I believe, of what they're doing with the $78 million is waiving those co-pays, which are the family's portion of that subsidized payment. And then the state makes up for the difference between, it's at about the 60th percentile of market rate. So well under the cost of actually providing care. So
and then
the combined funding.
So if we're saying that this is for increasing the capacity, I mean, do we know that we need that increased capacity, as we know that there's, you know, kids being home, there's a lot of working parents that are working from home with their kids. I mean, I guess are all the childcare businesses at full capacity currently?
They are, so what we've found, and we can probably speak more to this, but I know that there's been some discussion on that 1,000 vacancy number. And what we have found is that because childcare providers have had to close their classrooms due to the fluctuation in demand, initially it was a plummet in demand because everybody was staying home. But because of those fluctuations and then the increased costs, the increase in expenses, they have not been able to necessarily reopen those classrooms and serve the current demand, which right now I can't give you numbers for this, but allegorically speaking, it's been a huge demand in school-age care, which will still be needed once kids do start to go back to school, because we need that before and after school care.
And the other piece that I would add is that the Department of Commerce has said that for people who are out of work and looking for work, 47% of them say that access to childcare is a barrier in going back to work. So there is a huge demand for care for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions, Mary?
No, I'm just trying to figure out what my thoughts are. Josh, you go ahead.
No, I mean, I think, I mean, my questions have, my questions have been answered, you know, but there is still sort of that question mark looming out there. I mean, because I'll admit, I did not know about the 78 million coming down from the state. I mean, that's news to me today.
I guess with that, I mean, would we look at maybe 2 million in provider grants, 1 million in tuition grants, and then adjusting the administrative to the 10%? Carrie, does that make sense?
So Commissioner, this is Carrie. So are you thinking 2 million to the child care, 1 million to the family child care tuition grants, and then adjusting the grants administration amount, or keeping it the same?
Right, to 300.
To 300, okay.
That would be 10% of the.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my, you know, Al's up for the whole thing, so that's just, I think that's where I would land at this point in time. And again, the 78 million is coming down from the state, you know, that will affect some of them and some not. So I think I'd be more comfortable there.
So Mary,
I do think
the 78 that's coming from the state, is that just coming to Spokane County, or is that statewide?
It's statewide. So I mean, 39 counties, you're going to get, you know, I would assume at least 1 million coming here.
Okay.
Yeah, so $30 million of that $78 million is being allocated to provider grants, with an emphasis on reopening grants.
Okay.
And that's statewide, right, Catherine?
Yes, statewide. Yeah, 30 million statewide for provider grants.
That's what I understood too. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that, Commissioner French? The adjusted number that Commissioner CUNY threw out.
Yeah, no, you know, with I didn't know about the 78 million either and stuff. So that's new information and stuff. So if you were to assume that, you know, Spokane County is going to get what, $1.5 million, $2 million of that, maybe. So that would adjust the number down to around 2 million for what we would do locally, and still get the daycare providers at a point to where, you know, this expectation is covered. So maybe that's a more realistic package to put together. I can support that.
Okay. Any final thoughts, Commissioner Cuny?
Nope, I think I think that's where I'm comfortable, you know, knowing that if that's new for you guys and just with the community, I just want to be careful, you know, in how we're spending things. And so I think that's still providing grants to providers and providing tuition and taking care of the administrative side.
Yeah, the tuition grants for me would be a big thing. That's low-income families that are having difficulty and being forced to stay at home because they got no place to take their kids and stuff. So I mean, at least that helps people get back to work or do other things with. So the family child care tuition grants, $1 million, I'm fine with. The small business provider grants, if we were to adjust that to $1 million and see how that goes and how it packages up with what the state does. We can always come back and do more, but you know, maybe that's a good starting point.
And I was at 2 million now. I was just
What's
taking,
that?
I was at 2 million for the small business provider grants.
And 1 million for the vouchers?
Yeah. So 3 million total with then 300,000 for grants administration.
Okay. I can support that.
All right, Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the, oh, could you please put that back up for me? Thank you. Mr. Chair, move to approve and authorize the expenditures of up to $3.3 million to cover the costs of childcare small business provider grants in the amount of $2 million, family childcare tuition grants of up to $1 million, and grant administration by community-minded enterprises up to the amount of $300,000 as discussed here today.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much for supporting the child care industry and our families. Really appreciate it.
All right, next up, Miss Stephanie Curran. Thanks for your patience. Hopefully this will pay off for you.
Oh, yes, of course. No, they're obviously very important decisions you're all making. So thank you for including me in your agenda today. I know you have some documentation that I have sent in a week or so ago. So I'll just go through each ask and then you can ask questions at the end. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so the first one that you have is the tools for selling the podium, formerly known as the Sportsplex. I can tell you we are on schedule to open that building in August of 21, so just less than a year away. We had a huge event booked for 2022, but that has moved to 2023, not because of anything we did, but that whole schedule has shifted. They shifted everything a year. So right now we're in the process of rebooking, booking our first year of 2022. We have a pretty big opportunity out there right now the Sports Commission is working on and several other bids. But as you know, we're kind of in a new virtual world right now. It should be the next slide. We're in a new virtual world right now, so we're having to get creative. We're normally we would be bringing the governing bodies in and wining them, dining them, and showing them around Spokane and taking them to dinner and then doing hard hat tours. And when prior to COVID hitting, we were doing opportunities where we would sit with governing bodies in our boardroom and right there. And we would kind of have them walk through the building with us and kind of strategize our events. But we're obviously not able to do that. But fortunately, there are some virtual opportunities for us. There's the 3D interactive virtual tour. And those, you've actually probably seen a smaller version of one that we had done by our architect firm Integris. It's where you take the renderings and you make them 3D, and you can basically feel like you're walking through the space. So we would have this video created where our clients could go literally on a tour through the building, even though it's not built yet, via the renderings, and then obviously click around and go into different spaces and see what things look like. And then the other thing that we are in need of is a marketing video to highlight not just the podium, but obviously downtown. What the podium has going for it over all other venues of its type is the package that we provide here in Spokane, with the walkability, access to downtown, restaurants, access to the hotels. You know, you don't need a rental car, you can pretty much walk everywhere. So that's the story that we want to tell, the story of the podium and why we've named it the podium, which is basically, you know, the pinnacle of where you want to be as an athlete is on the podium, as well as the fact that we sit on a natural podium, basalt podium that elevates the building. So those are two items that at the ask of $57,000 that we would like to be able to purchase in order to sell the building in this new virtual world. The second one, and this is actually a really exciting opportunity for us, the NCAA is looking at potentially doing bubble cities, similar to what the NBA is doing in Orlando, where they put all the teams in one city and then they play all the games, and it's considered a bubble because that's where they stay. The NCAA is looking at doing this. I know Vegas has thrown their hat in the ring, and I believe Portland as well. There has not been a site selected for the Northwest. And as a matter of fact, we are actually ahead of the game with the universities. We've actually gotten out ahead, and some of the universities we've contacted didn't even know this was happening. So, which is obviously great that we're all over this. It would be the Mountain West, Big West, WCC, WAC, and the Big Sky, and they would basically send teams here for 10 days. They would practice at the convention center, and then the games would be played at the arena, and they would be televised. Another opportunity, or another plus for this, is we are hosting the women's regional NCAA tournament this coming March, assuming we're able to. If we're not able to, they're also looking at doing regional sites. So if we could do this one this year, which would be November or December, we could then bring the NCAA here and show them that we are potentially, that we can do it, and that we could be a potential site for their women's regional, which would be huge. That would be 16 teams over those 3 weeks. So this ask is for $240,000. Now, I just remind you that we only need this money if we actually secure this event. And if we do, it would bring in, as you can see, 2,200 hotel rooms, 600 plus visitors for 10 days, with an economic impact of $900,000, which is about 4 times the ask. So this would definitely be a good return on investment. The city would be on television. And again, it would return a lot to the community. It would be a huge shot in the arm if we could get an event here this year. All right, next up, this is actually an ask specific to the PFD. As you know, we haven't been eligible for any funding of any sort so far. But from the very beginning, we've taken the stance that we're not going to be a victim of this virus. We're going to reinvent ourselves. We became a homeless shelter in the summer at the arena. We then became a clean air shelter just last month during the fires. We've been being a site for training for the VA hospital. I'm currently working with the Parks Department on potentially holding their rec leagues here. And then we were able to get the state to agree that we can do events for 200 people or less. And so we'll be able to open up the convention center for smaller groups. In order to open, though, of course, we have to be ready, and we needed to invest in a lot of things due to COVID. Touchless is the word these days, social distancing, anything to keep people safe. We've gone through the GBAC certification, which is the Global Biorisk Advisory Council. That's a certification that once you receive that, you're deemed safe, and it's an excellent sales tool. Actually, all of this is so we can tell our guests, if you come to Spokane to our venues, we are accredited, you are safe, we have all the correct protocols, everything from cleaning and sanitation to just everything that you can imagine that you would need to think about in terms of opening a new building. We're also having to remarket events that we have lost, and also we'll have to do a reopening marketing campaign. There are a lot of cities, as you know, that are currently open. Florida's open, Orlando's open, I should say, other cities in Florida, Oklahoma City. So there's a potential that we want to make sure we don't lose. We are still in the top of mind, especially of convention planners, and they don't start looking to rebook the events that we lost in cities that are currently open. So we just want to make sure that they know that we are ready as soon as we get the green light. We are we will be ready to open and that we're approved. So that is a big ask. That is 1.9. That is money we have actually already spent in order to get ready and be ready to open. It does not include any of the labor or any of the other, payroll and such that we've been spending in order to get all this done. But this is the actual cost for the situation, the things we've had to purchase. So those are the three. Have any questions, I'm assuming?
So the total ask is 2.217 million?
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Ste-
Just make sure I
Stephanie,
got the right number.
Can we pull the presentation back up?
Sure. Yeah, what do you need?
So somebody's quick on the draw today, taking the presentations down right away.
I know
Can
who
you go
that
to?
is, Ron.
Yeah. Can you go to the one about the bubble? There we go. Can you explain to me? So what? I mean, I get the concept of a bubble. I mean, I guess where it's the teams all stay together. There's no fans in there, but like what does the $240,000 go to purchase?
Yes.
To make
great question.
So-called bubble happen.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. I should have articulated that better. So that $240,000 is the cost that it would cost the PFD to host the event. So the rental of the convention center, well, not really rental, it's operating costs of the convention center. And then obviously the setup of everything at the arena, all of that stuff. So the teams would really only have to pay travel and then their expenses, meals and such. And the difference between the NCAA bubble and the NBA, at the NBA level, I believe they're pretty much sticking to, they're in their hotel and then they're at their arena and they don't really go out and about. In this one, the athletes are tested before they get here, when they get here, they're tested every day. So they're actually allowed to move around within the community, which is where the economic impact comes in. So that they are able to go out to a restaurant and eat and walk around and things like that. But yeah, that is the cost that obviously we didn't have budgeted for this event because it wouldn't exist without COVID.
Okay, so that is not, the 240 does not go to purchase any type of equipment, testing capacity, anything like that.
No.
It's the cost to get the tournament.
Yeah, so we have, and we have purchased equipment already for testing. We have temperature readers at all of our, entrances and things like that, which the athletes would obviously go through that protocol. But the universities are actually responsible for obviously also testing their athletes. So they would be tested, they would be taking care of all that on their end. And then we would just be kind of a backup once they got to our building.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking.
Mary?
So my question's for Carrie. I mean, because Stephanie, obviously we want to try to figure out how we can help, but I want to try to make sure that it's all within the CARES eligible funding. So Carrie, can you speak to that?
Sure. Stephanie and I have spent a lot of time. Thank you, Stephanie, for all of your time with me. After reviewing this, I think all of it is within the CARES Act funding. There's another question, commissioners, that I'm trying to get answered and that I'll follow up with Stephanie in the long run. One of the questions that's come up recently is whether or not staff time can be covered with CARES Act funding as well. And we may have to bring this back, Stephanie, if I get my response back from Treasury in the not too distant future. One of the questions coming up right now is like for all events that were canceled, I'm working with West Coast Entertainment and others, and Stephanie and I had this conversation. If staff time was incurred in rescheduling events that were at the facility due to the COVID pandemic, would that staff time be allowable under CARES Act funding? So I'm trying to get an answer from Treasury with regards to that, and then be able to present that information to the commissioners through other asks that may be coming forward, and then certainly reaching back to Stephanie as well with regards to those costs. But yes, Commissioner, I really culled through this proposal. Stephanie revised her proposal based on our conversations to the commissioners. So yes, I believe everything is fully within the CARES funding.
Yeah, and if I could just add to what Carrie said about the other potential, we have had to move. Like you can imagine, we had events booked in the spring of last year that got canceled, and they all moved to the fall of this year. And then, of course, then when things started to look not so good, we moved them from the fall to 2021. Now we have business in 2021 that we're now looking to move into the third or fourth quarter of 2021. So essentially we have, for one event, we've moved it 3 times and we've marketed it 3 times, and now we're going to have to market it again. And, you know, obviously West Coast has the same situation with all of their shows. They lost their whole season. They marketed it all. They spent all the staff, you know, time selling the tickets. And so we're all kind of in that situation where we're trying to figure out if, you know, the one piece of business we're now spending, it's like we're doing it 4 times. So if there's any way that some of that can be covered, that would be very helpful.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is very helpful. And then Carrie, it's just going to remind me that, you know, one of the things I want to talk about is the fairgrounds as well, because I think since they're an enterprise fund, you know, even though they're part of the county, we're going to need to think of this with them as well. So,
yeah, Commissioner, I think our payroll cost, I'm working on that internally, regardless of whether it was general fund or enterprise fund. So that might be a little different, but it kind of falls under the same. But I have put the question into U.S. Treasury, and hopefully we'll have the answer to you fairly shortly, within the next week.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other thoughts? Ready to move forward with the a motion, or do we need more information?
I'm comfortable moving forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm ready.
Go ahead and make
All
a
right.
motion.
All right, so let's see if I can get this right here. So, Mr. Chair, move to approve and authorize CARES funding in the amounts of $57,000 for the, up to the amount of $57,000 for the 3D interactive virtual tour and marketing video, $1,920,000 of CARES dollars, up to that amount for the purchase of the touchless points of sale, PPEs, temperature readers, and all other equipment related to the COVID pandemic, and up to $240,000 for the 2020 NCAA Division I 12-team tournament bubble, contingent on Spokane securing that tournament, as presented by Stephanie Curran today.
I will second that.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Stephanie, for all your work on that.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so next up, Mr. Chad Coles, who
You got Matt Zakor there.
oh, there he is. All
And
right.
there's Chad too.
All right, Mr. Coles, the floor is yours.
Thank you, board. Good morning. The first issue that we wanted to discuss was the upcoming. You've already been briefed on it, but it's the upcoming Gibbs Road hearing for tomorrow. I do have a screen I could share if you guys wanted to see the picture, but if you recall, it's a gravel road in South County that we were talking about a temp closure on. We've gotten quite what.
You can go ahead and share your screen if you want.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of emails and correspondence on this one, Chad.
I noticed that. So this is the issue. Gibbs Road goes between Sands and Madison. Madison's paved, Sands is not. This is essentially between Palouse Highway and Dishman-Mica Road, Dishman-Mica being just a little off screen to the north. The connection for Sands north to Dishman-Mica is by up here like this, and it ties back into Madison right about here, just short of Dishman-Mica. So the issues have been, here's the temporary closure that we're bringing to the board tomorrow. The issues that I've read mostly concern farm equipment and emergency access. There's some folks that claim they use the road quite often. Gibbs Road is in is very much a summer road that is all but impassable 6 months out of the year. You know, you know, obviously we don't plow the snow in the winter, so that some of that, you know, you wonder about the impacts. But I am absolutely open to questions. The issue, there isn't really a road network issue out here. It's more of a local request that we're bringing forward.
Okay. Mary, this is in your district. You got any questions or anything?
Well, I've been out there several times, and the road, I went out one time, the road is impassable in the winter. So, I mean, it's just one of those that, you know, it is strictly a summer road. It's not, you know, we had issues where somebody was doing some additional work on the other end of it that, you know, wasn't bringing it up to county road standards at all. So it's not a road, it's a dirt road that's not up to county road, you know, standards for a thoroughfare. You know, I know some of the comments have been, you know, well, why don't you spend the money to make it a thoroughfare? And that's not the purpose there. You know, we don't have the funding to do that. You know, there's other roads that need funding more than this road. So I'm, you know, I think, you know, we've had a lot of comments either way, but I certainly over the last year and a half, I mean, I've had lots of people that want the road closed. So I don't know. I just, you know, it's like, we're not going to be able to spend more money on it, and it is a summer road. So I don't see why, if we have it closed, I think, Chad, you talked about having, you know, key for access for the farmers.
Right. If I could share that, the obviously all the folks that live on the road would get, you know, it's a gate with a padlock on it essentially, on either end. All the folks that are on the road would have the availability of getting a key, as well as farmers that come to us. We can give out keys to whoever we want to. The other thing I pointed out to Commissioner Cuney is that this is at the board's discretion. You cannot put it on, and if you put it on, you could take it off at any time. It's not a huge deal either way.
Okay. Josh, you got any concerns?
No, I thought so. I thought we'd already made the decision to add the gate. I thought that was a decision that we were already briefed on a couple of weeks ago. Or I mean, I could be confusing that just with a meeting I had with Chad, and he referenced it. So I mean, I could be confusing or mixing up meetings there. But
and I think we actually talked about this pre-COVID. It was like one of the things that happened, and then COVID happened. So I think we were going to have the public hearing, but then we had to cancel the public hearing. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no. So I mean, I think in the spring we talked about it, that we were going to do this, and I mean, we weren't able to have a public hearing.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Coles?
I did have some other minor issues that are coming up to the board next week for hearing. There's a just wanted to give you a heads up on. I have not heard any negative feedback on these, so I'll just give you a heads up. The first is a no trucks or restricted traffic on Graves Road. Graves Road is in North Spokane County, running between Wall Street and Division Street. And if you looked at the map, it looks like a really good arterial connection. And if you looked at the road, you would realize it's not a really good arterial connection. It's a fairly narrow local resident street, 20 feet wide, houses very close to the roadway, that sort of thing.
Chad, can you remind me, is that the one that actually even has the little bridge on it? Or is,
you know, I can't remember. It does have it does have a little bridge on it. I don't know if that's the one we've restricted. I was thinking that was Holland that we had.
No, I know it. I know it's not Holland.
Okay, it's Graves.
It's not Holland. Okay, yeah, and I
built for the 5 mile runoff years ago.
Yeah, it runs right through here.
That's a very, very narrow bridge.
Yeah, and what happens is the bridge is failing, and we've restricted traffic to the part that can carry it right now.
Okay.
Those are older houses too, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yeah, they're very close. So the proposal is to restrict this to truck traffic. Obviously, if you're familiar with the area, the major arterials are Division Street, Highway 2, Country Homes Boulevard, Wall Street, and Whitworth Drive are our arterials, our existing arterials in Hawthorne in that area. So it's surrounded, there's no real driving need for trucks to be on this road except for local deliveries. Any questions?
Nope, looks like we're good.
All right, one more. And this is a proposed 35-mile-an-hour speed limit change on 7 Mile Road. This is 7 Mile Road, right where Old Trails comes into 7 Mile. If you're not familiar with the area, Northwest County, there's the Spokane River, really pretty bridge right there that we built a few years ago. If you'll recall, we rebuilt Old Trails Road into a paved arterial connecting up to, gosh, what am I thinking of? What's that arterial there? Connecting to the West Plains and to Airway Heights. So since we've done that, we've received quite a bit more traffic right at this intersection, which has fairly limited sight distance. We've gotten quite a few complaints from folks using that. Our number of trips on Inland Road has increased dramatically, I think 100-fold since we did that change. And so the proposal is for a limited area right around the intersection to put a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. Right now we have an advisory there, and from what we can tell, folks aren't paying any attention to it. So we're proposing to increase the authority of that speed zone in that area. Any questions?
Questions for Chad? Nope, looks like we're good.
All right, gentlemen. Commissioner Cuny. That's all I have.
Very good, thanks, Chad.
All right, thank you.
So any miscellaneous matters for either one of you? Ms. Gunny?
Not at this point in time. I guess, one of them was, talking with Carrie on the fairgrounds, because, I really think, with everything that's happened for them and the fact that we're storing the PPE out there, I don't see why we're not able to provide them rent to do that out of the CARES dollars.
I thought we were. Why not?
No. So I think we need to relook at that, especially since they're a enterprise fund. Initially it was since you're part of the county, but I think since they're an enterprise fund, I think we should be able to do that. And so I really want to make sure we have Carrie look into that.
Hey, Carrie, are you still on, or have you already bailed on us? Jerry will circle back with Carrie and find out why we can't.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because Aaron and I talked about that in the past, that I thought it was qualified, but we'll touch bases again and see what's going on.
And I'm hearing that some counties are doing it, some aren't, but I think, again, since they're an enterprise fund,
absolutely,
paying them just like a business. So, yeah, so I just want to have us take a look at that.
Okay. Any other miscellaneous matters for you, Mary?
I don't think so at this point.
Okay, Josh?
I don't have anything, but there is one other item here. It looks like under miscellaneous, letter of support for special mobility services. I don't know what that is. It was on the printed agenda.
So we have a letter request here. It looks like this. It's on the screen. It's to Rusty Kuntz, Special Mobility Services. Dear Mr. Kuntz, do you guys have that? Or do you
I see our legislative agenda on the screen. I don't see the letter yet.
You don't?
No, it's the legislative agenda that was on there. Yep, that's it.
So, do we want to get more information on this before we take any action on it?
Yeah, I don't even know what special mobility services is.
Yeah. Okay, let's reach out to him and get more information on it before we do anything with it. Okay, anything else, Josh?
Nope.
So I have 2 executive session items. Be very quick, probably 10 minutes at the most for both of them. So if we could deal with those now, then we can just adjourn afterwards and we won't reconvene until tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So one is executive session for pending or potential litigation. That should take about 10 minutes at the most. And the other one is qualifications of an individual for public employment. That one should take no more than 10 minutes. And for the executive session, just be all 3 commissioners, executive management team. And when we were done, we'll be adjourned for the rest of the day and we'll reconvene tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So it is now, let's say it's 11:55. We'll be in executive session until 12:15. Okay.